and you've outed yourself as a monstrous person. The only way you can regain their trust is by...
Oh, hey.
Are you done with the video?
Yeah, how the fuck do you get in here?
Danabo dragged me in.
Oh, okay. I was like, you should have that role. How'd you get it? No wonder you're able to get all these sources so quick. You have friends in high places.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Pretty good. I'm sorry you guys had to watch that video.
Oh my gosh. What do you think about this video, upon reflection?
I mean, the editing is terrible. The end's really hyperbolic. I want to apologize to Demon Mama. I'm definitely too hard. Like after I made this when I was really, really, really annoyed with the Vadim tweets, and I was just generally speaking too hyperbolic.
Yeah.
And yeah, upon reflection, her behavior really wasn't that bad. It's pretty understandable, I think.
Yeah, and I talked to her in a private, and I don't want to say anything, but it was completely cleared up. We were basically on the same page.
Yeah, but Vadim's behavior is really unacceptable. I'm not backing down off of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, like if people want my genuine opinion about it, like I think like a lot of the stuff on stream I can excuse, definitely, since he wasn't, I guess, in on it. Now I can ask like how somebody wasn't in on it, because it felt like super obvious to anybody who was watching, right? I felt. But apparently, due to all the dislikes and outrage I got, apparently a lot of people weren't in on it. So I can like believe that. But once people were in on it, right? The whole like Twitter stuff, like I felt like that just went off the deep end and went into fucking crazy town.
Yeah. I agree with you, chat. It's really hyperbolic. I'm not going to defend that video.
Okay. Yeah, I was just like a monster. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah. I'm
like, it feels like you're talking about like the Christchurch shooter, not like a fucking YouTuber. Yeah.
I didn't think anyone was going to see that video. I didn't realize I was going to make another video. Everyone's going to watch.
Dylan Burns was going to watch it himself.
Yeah, it's so cringe. Yeah.
Let me ask you. You've been getting a lot of attention recently because of all of this stuff. What's it like getting all this attention?
It's weird. So like, for the first couple of days, it was pretty awkward. I was mostly uncomfortable with it. I guess I'm kind of chilling out a little bit, and like it's weird because you'll get like 9 people DMing you saying like something really nice, like your video is really good, I appreciate it, I hope you keep making videos, and then one person will say something nasty, and it's like the only thing you can think about, right? So yeah, the first couple of days was kind of uncomfortable. I guess I'm kind of getting used to it. I don't know. It's weird. It's a really weird feeling.
It's it's oh, sorry. Oh my God. I took some medicine, medical medicine from the medicine store. Okay. So, oh shit. Sorry. Fuck. Ooh, give me a second.
Damn, man.
Medicine. So, fuck, Jesus. You poisoned me? Okay, I need to stop. Okay, so, wow, it's getting hard to talk. So, okay, I'm recovered.
You all good?
I didn't recover. It was a lie. It was a lie. Now I'm just like Vaush. Okay. So the thing is, getting a lot of attention very fast on the internet is extremely jarring, and I guess, for me, it was a lot more gradual. It was pretty fast too, but more like a gradual, like, increasing of the speed, right? I didn't go from like 0 to 80. I went like from 0 to 20, 30, 40, 50, but it was fast. And so it's the flip on the switch if everybody now knows who you are, or everybody's like looking at your stuff at the same time. I haven't been able to ever experience that, like as a big jolt, but I can't say I have been in situations where everybody's watching your video, everybody's watching your stuff, you're getting backlash, you're also getting praise or whatever way, and it can be extremely jarring because you just feel like you're at the center of the world right now, and like, but you feel like you didn't do anything that's worth that much attention, or like, you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So like, part of it is, so like, I'm sure a lot of people are like, man, this guy must really hate Vaush. So, I was pretty upset with Vaush the first month I was making this video. By the last 2 weeks, I did not care anymore. I was just trying to get the video done. I was so over the whole thing. And I would obviously I wouldn't have predicted this response, right? I didn't think I was going to end up going on a bunch of different shows and stuff. to talk about this video. Yeah, I don't know. I really was just focused. I just wanted to make a good video. I knew I had good material. I wanted to make it as good as I reasonably could, given the time constraints. Also, let me address something that chat was talking about. So, a lot of people are blowing up these comments about me saying I wasn't trying to like.
Yeah, can I was 1 second? Let me show those on
Sure.
screen quick. Okay, this President Sunday tweet.
Yeah. So let me explain this really simply. This looks bad. I'm not good with optics at all, by the way, guys. I'm not good with optics. But let me just explain this to you guys. Okay. If I have 30 examples to make a point, every time I show one less example in the video, I'm compromising the strength of the argument to make the video watchable. And if I included everything that I had, the video would be, I mean, literally 14, 15 hours long. Nobody would watch it, right? So just by necessity, when you're making a video that you want people to watch, you're always going to be reducing the logical strength of an argument. That's just a necessity if you want to actually create something that people are going to watch. So like, this is kind of like, there's a rule you learn when you're starting creative writing. It's basically like write an essay and then cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half. You're trying to cut out all the dead weight that you need. So I cut everything that I could reasonably cut while still believing that I could make the argument, well. I could make a theoretical better argument if I included every piece of context.
Are you telling me that there's like 20 hours of Vadim content out there on Hippy Dippy?
Oh, not Vadim. I'm talking about Vaush.
Okay. I was just fucking with you.
Yeah. No, I'm way over the Vadim stuff. I haven't thought about that for months. Yeah, no. So like these quotes look bad, but it means nothing. Like it just means that I was making a video that I wanted people to be able to watch. Like guy, let's be real. It's a cringe video about internet people screaming at each other. It's not I keep saying, I'm not submitting a dissertation for a PhD defense, right? This isn't the most serious thing in the world. It's a cringe YouTube video. So like, yeah, I don't know. People are making a really big deal out of this. It's not a big deal.
So it's not like a statement of like, but does that mean that like there's something in your video or a few things in your video that are not correct?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't seen anyone point out something that's like wrong. There's a lot of stuff that people can say is not persuasive for one reason or another, or like, like the morality section isn't even really making a strong argument. Like anybody that has a different moral perspective could just disagree with it, right? But I haven't seen anyone point something out where it's like, you got that wrong, right?
Yep. President Sunday is in chat currently. Would you want me to read his thing to you?
I really don't like this person. I don't want anything to do with him, to be honest with you.
Okay. Got it. So let me just read it for my personal sake then. Okay. I don't think it's relevant to the video. That's too much for me.
This guy's like legitimately harassing me. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't know much about it. I talked to him once. Anyway. Okay. So now that we're through the Vadim stuff, right? And we all agree that everybody should tune in for the soon-to-be Zerka Dylan Burns collaboration for the next Hippy Dippy Showdown, right? Which is going to be great. I want to get into this video you produced and you made and you put out and you sponsored like a little film, a little Charlie Chaplin, right? And the first thing I want to ask you about is, why did you make this video?
Sure. So the process of making this video is actually probably a lot different than people think. So initially, the idea was not to do a video on Vaush. The idea was to like do a video critiquing online politics. So a lot of the critiques that I make of Vaush, I think, apply almost equally to a lot of other people. Like especially the format section. I mean, it's basically just critiquing React Andes, right? That's not remotely exclusive to Vaush. And like the misinformation section, that is not remotely exclusive to Vaush, right? And this is going to sound weird I'm sure everyone thinks I'm like the biggest hate watcher, Vaush hater in the world, right? But one of the reasons that I chose to make it about Vaush is that at the time, I actually believed that he was one of the more likely people to actually take the criticism and improve. That's one of the reasons I started watching his videos. I knew that there were problems with what
was
he was
at
doing.
All motivated by the fact that he's, of course, the biggest face, so the most needed for criticism or like to change or anything like that?
So I don't remember specifically, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if that was part of it. I don't remember that being part of my motivation, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if that factored in.
Okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, for example, like when I made his content about Afghanistan, I just titled it "Your Favorite Streamers Wrong About Afghanistan." I had a picture of Hassan and a bunch of big streamers. The whole point was that I'm gonna concentrate on the big streamers, even though a bunch of little streamers done it, because they're the ones with the biggest audience. You want to get the message out to the biggest audience possible, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously a factor. It's like it's not like I'm not super motivated by money. I don't think this is. I didn't think this was something I would make any money from. But obviously, you want to make a video that people watch, right? It's like you have a message, you want people to see it.
Yeah, of course. So let's go through this video. I think section by section is probably the best way to do it. So the first thing I want to say is that the bad faith section, the first section you had here, I mostly agree with your analysis here. That definitely when it comes to the Count Dankula thing, in the Count Dankula interaction, it's very clear from like how it went down that if you throw an accusation at somebody, right? You throw a really lofty accusation like white nationalist, Nazi. I think I've learned a thing or two about throwing unsupported, uncharitable accusations at people. It's not a good thing to do. And there can be a lot of post hoc rationalization once you get into that position and you push back. And it seems that if he went in there, and he says at the end that he admits that he is not a white nationalist in the way that he classified him, which for me shows that he didn't do enough research, because like what evidence out there is there that Count Dankula is a racist besides Nazi pug dog and UKIP?
I mean, it's mostly his associations, I think, but I'm not super familiar with Dankula. So like one of my focuses was to try and, I didn't want to be defending the people Vaush was talking to. I tried to keep it in the context of like the video.
And the other thing that specifically I also agree that was bad faith was that it was the interaction about the "it's the joke," where Vaush readily acknowledges that "it's a joke" is a defense, actually. Now, it's not always a defense, and I think you would acknowledge that if somebody's like 6 million cookies, like there's something being suggested here.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's anything. There's nothing like that when it comes to Count Dankula. But there are similar things like that when it comes to Vaush, and he acknowledges that is a worthwhile criticism. And here, it feels like in this interaction that he wants to basically he wants to argue that point, but he can't because he knows he holds the same thing. So instead, he specifically is going after the fact that he's going to say this a bunch of times. And I completely agree with you on this interaction.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's you can go on. Yeah.
Irrelevant mentioned one thing I want to clarify. So I think he was right. There's something I wish I would have done. It's a slight reframing of this section. So Vaush's initial accusation of calling him a white supremacist was bad faith. But Irrelevant was right. There was a point in this conversation where Vaush says he wants to reset from neutral ground. And that actually isn't necessarily a bad faith position. Now, having seen the whole conversation, it was a very bad faith conversation, right? It was a very bad faith conversation. But there's a point in the video where you could very easily make an argument that Vaush isn't being bad faith, and I portrayed the entire thing as being bad faith. So I wish I had portrayed that differently.
Okay, somebody in chat is telling me that the conversation, and I'm just gonna throw this to you because I'll just throw this towards you, that the conversation wasn't Vaush calling Dankula a white nationalist, but saying his jokes feed them.
I mean, several times during the discussion, Dankula says, "You called me a white nationalist," or "You called me a white supremacist." I don't remember exactly which one, but
yeah. And at the end, he says, "Do I feel like he's a white supremacist in the way that I made the accusation on stream?" No.
Yeah, like I don't think that's legitimate.
Like I don't. That doesn't sound like he was just talking about his jokes. It sounds like he was talking about him. But there's another thing I wanted to point it to, and I think you already acknowledged that this was a mistake. But you classified as these two definitions are like exactly the same. And this is a little nitpicky, or like these are the same, but they're. I think you already know what I'm going to say. There is a pretty distinct difference here.
Okay, so sure, I can explain this. Okay, so first of all, I don't say they're identical. I say they're almost identical.
Almost.
And the person who made this objection, if you watch the first time they watched the video, they didn't realize the definitions were different. Like no one realizes the definitions are substantially different until you like pause in this frame and look at it. But the point isn't like the point that they're identical isn't really the issue. The issue is whether or not it's hypocritical that Vaush is attacking Dankula's definition in a way that applies to his own definition,
Mhm.
which he absolutely is. So like the person, President Sunday, who's probably people are thinking of that made this critique, he admitted that Vaush's attack on Dankula's definition also applies to his own definition. Like that hypocrisy is what really matters. Vaush responds with this incredible indignation, and he's like, "It's so ridiculous. You present this ridiculous unacademic definition."
Yeah, it was
And
really
Vaush's
hyperbolic.
definition is
It was
also
hyperbolic.
Vaush's definition is also unacademic. So that's the substantive thing. Like it, I yeah, like I don't want to get stun locked, but I just don't see the validity of the critique of this part personally.
So the thing for me is, of course, it's the or that we need to engage in politics or other social actions to prioritize that group of people. And this is pretty important generally. And I don't think this applies to him, but I just wanted to correct the record. That is an important distinction because there's a lot of people that won't say like, hey, I don't believe white people are superior. I just believe, we need our own states or we need to like separate the races because I think it just goes better that way. And I just do think that, and this is me just being nitpicky, I will admit, but I do want to just clarify that is true. That this is different.
Yeah, I mean, if you pause on the frame and look at the definitions, they're different words, and like there's different like
Well, it's not just different
what's it
words,
called?
but
Yeah,
like there's a whole other section here included that was not included in Dankula's.
yeah. But like my point was that if you were to watch through the video without like thinking about this, I think basically everyone would have just heard them giving the colloquial definition of white supremacy, right?
Um. Yes. I agree with that.
Yeah. So like that's the point. And like if people want to say, if people want to, so like let's be clear about what the correction would be if I issued a correction here. I would be changing almost identical to like a slightly less strong phrasing. I mean, we're talking about a very, very minor change of language. Like we would be changing like almost identical to extremely similar, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Um. I guess the only way I would change it maybe is not like extremely similar because there is a distinct difference. It'd be like two definitions that could easily be used to define white supremacy and are not like maybe something along those lines. But there's not like a lot to change. The only thing is that there is a pretty distinct difference with the or,
yeah. Like
and I think it does make sense for Vaush to have reacted in that scenario to be like, I don't agree with it. I think he went a little over the top, but I'd be like, I don't agree with that definition, and then explain the or. But I don't even. Was that what occurred afterwards? I don't believe so.
No, like the best thing for me to do from like a video making perspective is just to never say anything about how they're identical and to just say that Vaush's critique of Dankula's definition also applies to his own definition. If I just said that, there wouldn't be any problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay.
also by the way, really quickly, there's a storm outside, so if I dip, it wasn't intentional. But go ahead.
Got you. No worries. Okay. So what? Let me just try to remember what else was in the bad faith section. Sorry, I'm running off like 30 minutes of sleep.
No, I'm actually the same. I'm very tired right now, so I understand.
Okay, the Hunter Avallone. Okay, so let me read this statement from Vaush. And you said that you wanted more like actual like general disagreement, more on like an ideological or fundamental level than just like people going through nitpicking. So I just wanted to get this because I do think I might have a fundamental disagreement with you, but I haven't talked it
Sure.
out. So I want to talk it
I'm
out.
happy to respond to any critiques that you have. When I say I don't want like nitpicks, I'm talking about like YouTube comments. Like anything you want to say, I'm happy to listen to.
Okay. So this is from Vaush. Yeah, a reminder, by the way, the only reason that I ever tried to talk to Hunter Avallone the way that I did was because I talked to Shoeonhead beforehand. I thought that Hunter Avallone was just another dumb fuck, no principles conservative. Shoeonhead messaged me and said, hey, I met Hunter Avallone before. I think he's like an authentic guy. Like, I think he actually cares about the stuff that he believes in. And that's the only reason everything following with me and Hunter Avallone happened. So what you're using this is to basically prove that Vaush is acting in bad faith in other discussions, and that he didn't act in bad faith with Hunter because Hunter was a conservative that would listen, change, and is a good guy, not like the rest of those Republicans or something, right? Something along those lines?
Yeah, and people have objected to this and basically said that I think your thesis is correct, but this isn't good enough supporting evidence, and I think that's a good critique.
So I would say it isn't good enough supporting evidence. But
Yeah.
the bigger thing I want to talk to you about is Vaush wrong to do so, though? Because my as somebody who's streamed for a while now, and I interact with a lot of people, and there are certain people I interact with that I do engage with in good faith. American Nacho is somebody that I think is a good, principled conservative who I was able to talk to about why they voted for Trump. It was a great discussion. There's other people that I could put in that camp, but I'll just name the one so nobody else feels left out. I don't want to start naming people and forget one. So, but I've also talked to a lot of people where I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case at all. Like white nationalist types, or like people that are dug in and make a hardcore living off of this, and have decided they're going to publish themselves in the world. Because it's hard for me to believe that somebody's going to sit down in front of a camera, publish their views for the world, get paid for it, possibly a lot of money. It depends on the person, of course. And if I have a discussion with them about the death penalty, at the end of it, they'll be like, oh, you convinced me. It doesn't happen a lot because people are incentivized by so many different things to never move outside that position. And a lot of people are not going to play by the same rules as you if you wanted to be good faith. You can be good faith all you want, but if the other person isn't good faith, then you're kind of fucked. And there's a lot of examples where you can act with people who are not good faith, but it could be beneficial to your community and to their community to argue with them. And being bad faith in a few instances, like this is a genuine question. It's not me. This is not what I believe necessarily, but something I've been pondering. Being bad faith with other people or bad faith feels like just using all the tools at your disposal to deal with somebody in an effective manner that was going to act in that way and was never going to change anyway. That was going to be bad faith and was never going to change. Why should you leave those tools off the table?
Okay, so I actually learned a lesson about this recently. So um, I didn't have a. So this is a really interesting topic. I don't think it would necessarily change how I approach this section very much. But my perspective on this has changed a lot recently. So I hadn't had very many conversations with bad faith people. But I have absolutely learned that if you're good faith with someone who's bad faith, things go very, very, very poorly.
Yes.
Right? So I absolutely understand that. I never would have considered, for example, using like if I think Vaush debated like Nick Fuentes. You know, I never would have used that example and said like, man, Vaush should have really been good faith here, right? The reason that I chose the Dankula example, it's partially because so many things happen in a short succession that it makes it like I'm able to present a video where I don't have to explain every single clip. I can just show clips sequentially and they're almost completely in context. Whereas if I, like, for example, there was the prime case fascism discussion. I think that was a considerably worse faith discussion, but it's
By
like
the way,
almost
be careful. That's a trigger word. I'm kidding. Continue.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
sorry.
I'm kidding. I'm gonna get heat for that one.
Oh man. Okay, but so like if you go back and watch that conversation, just imagine trying to edit that. Like people are like screaming over each other. And like a lot of the statements, you would have to go back and show other statements, and it would just be a nightmare to try and explain that conversation, right? So
Yeah.
like, so I have a lot of examples like of conversations that I feel are that adequately demonstrate bad faith. This one was very, very good for the purposes of making a video that people could actually consume and not having to like meticulously go through and explain every single clip and lay pipe and stuff like that. But so as to the general point of like, are there appropriate times to be bad faith? I'm way more leaning in that direction now. Yeah, but I
Okay.
still don't think it was appropriate with Count Dankula because again, the Vaush's evidence was just very, very weak.
For me, when it comes to this, and this expands out of this conversation. If I'm talking to somebody that's acting in bad faith, and we're now doing this in front of an audience, the risk to me is no longer that I acted bad faith towards them or they acted bad faith towards me. The risk that's now at stake is you acting good faith and everybody in that audience looking at this and be like, wow, that one guy just fucking destroyed him. I guess that white nationalist might have had a good few points if he destroyed so and so, my favorite streamer, or anything along that. And then you're in a risky scenario where you basically got to get in the mud and get dirty, because if you don't get in the mud, you just try to stay out of the mud, throw it in your eyes, and you're fucked.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I agree.
Okay. So, but you do agree that this is not really sufficient, like supporting evidence, and
Yeah, I think that this is inadequate supporting evidence, but so like the general point is not really something that people can test. Like during this period of Vaush's YouTube engagement, or I guess not this period. This clip is from pretty recently, but he's referring to the whole Hunter Avallone thing. I think it happened like a year ago. During that period, like Vaush was pretty bad faith with like almost every conservative he talked to, right?
Let me ask you a question then. Is there any particular conversation where you think you can tell me that this conservatives were coming in completely good faith, and Vaush came in and was like, screw it. It doesn't even have to be conservative. Literally anybody.
I mean, the best example of that's the one that I used, unfortunately.
Was the Count Dankula one? Yeah, and I would say that. I would say that. But would you say this is a pattern of behavior for Vaush or a one-time example? Because my big
Okay,
problem with this,
so
it
I
doesn't
would
even
say,
necessarily have to do with faith. It has to be the throwing of a very large lobby accusation at somebody that has a lot, can have drastic impacts on their lives, and not having that supporting evidence, and feels like at the end he does back off it, which is good, but he backs off of it also in like a roundabout way.
sure. So here's what I'll say about that. During a certain period of time, I think probably roughly the beginning of his YouTube career up until, let's say, the beginning of 2021, I think it's a completely valid critique. Like, you can find counterexamples probably, but it was a very, very pronounced trend. I haven't watched all of his content recently, but I saw one of his conversations about critical race theory with some dude from TikTok, and that was a pretty good faith conversation. So,
And I
um,
mean, recent for me, I would say that generally his conversations have feel like they're getting more in good faith. And I think maybe that's because he's talking to different people, and because back in the day when you want to get started in political Twitch, like in 2019, like Vaush did, what Vaush did is he basically went into chat rooms. It was like, get me the most racist dumbasses in the room here, and then conversations ensued. And personally, I would not like fault anybody for not being good faith with like a racist prick, you know?
yeah,
And so for like, if I'm looking at those conversations as being bad faith there, honestly, it's hard for me to care that much. This Count Dankula example is different to me. But I'm trying to think of other examples where he was bad faith, and I would look at that and I'd be like, that was wrong because that person was there to actually learn.
yeah. I mean, so like I said, the prime case fascism conversation is a really good example. So beyond and this was somewhat recently, but I'm still willing to concede that he's probably gotten better faith in general. But that was a really bad conversation. Like, beyond the fact that he's confidently asserting things that are just factually not true
That is
about the
true.
election, he's also really like he was gaslighting people. He would say things and then someone would call him out on it, and he would just say like, "I didn't say that." And you can tell watching the conversation that they don't know how to respond to it, because when he says, "I didn't say that," it's like you didn't like clip it. You didn't write it down. You think you heard it, but now you don't know if you heard it, right? Um, and I don't remember the exact details, so I don't want to give too many. But I feel like that happened a good deal in that
I'm
conversation.
trying to
So
remember the guy. I did like a whole video on this. My main issue with that was the butterfly ballots, which he engaged in conspiracy theory, and like on that one, it was just massive conspiracy theory.
yeah,
And so
like
that
it,
was my big problem with that one. Which I guess like you could say was bad faith because he had to like seep into conspiracy theory, or was that just him being conspiratorial, or was that a consequence of him being bad faith? Right?
yeah. See,
That'd be the
it's hard.
question.
Yeah, I really try to not speculate on people's intentions. I don't know what was going on in that conversation. Um, I mean, if he said, "I was just confused," I think I would mostly accept that, but it's still like, I mean, it was still a really bad conversation, but I don't have any reason to believe that he wasn't just confused in that particular conversation. But I mean, it does stand that like a lot of really funky stuff went on, right?
I mean, when you say like a lot of really funky stuff went on, but is there anything specific that you can think of?
Yeah. So like in one example, he says, I remember this quote almost exactly. He says, something to the effect of either Republicans or the Republican judiciary. I don't remember exactly which one, but they almost to a man back every single thing that Trump does. And then someone calls him out for that. And then he's like, "What are you talking about?" So that was kind of like the gaslighting that I was talking about, where he was making these very, very strong statements. So in the beginning of the conversation, someone asks, "How many Republicans do you think are fascists?" And he responds, "How many of them voted for Trump?" And then this really upset people, and people kept pressing him on this for like hours, like literally hours. Um, and then he was kind of like refusing to admit that he said that. He would be like, "I didn't make any essentializing or totalizing statements," but it's like, "Yeah, you did." Like, they asked how many fascists are in the Republican Party. You said how many voted for Trump. I mean, that's a lot of them.
Yeah,
Like,
you're very obviously implying that. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, it's I really try not to um, say things unless I'm very confident in what I'm saying. I'm really trying to not spread misinformation about that conversation.
And what did you
But,
say the gaslighting was? It was the what are you talking about? So what you're saying is that
do you want me to pull up the exact quote? I can
yeah,
give it
I
right now.
would say if you could, I would appreciate that. I
Sure.
just want to be able to just like because if hey, the last thing I want to do is if I'm talking to somebody about other people not sourcing or not having the correct information, then I do that on that stream talking about that. Gonna have some pretty terrible egg on my face, and I hate eggs.
I'm okay. Okay, so it was the judiciary. So the quote was I can't pronounce this. The judiciary are fascist because they almost to a man back everything that he does. Um, then let's see. There's the later quote. Oh, okay. And then here we go. So there's another quote. I didn't say that everyone appointed by Trump has to back everything he says. It's funny that you're accusing me of being essentialist because I feel like every statement that I make is being criticized in an incredibly essentialist way.
Could you go
So
back and read the first one more time for me?
sure. So the first quote was, "The judiciary are fascist because they almost to a man back everything that he does." And this is in the context of Vaush arguing that the judiciary, generally speaking, has fascistic tendencies, or that it contains like a substantial number of fascists. Um, and then the later quote is, "I didn't say that everyone appointed by Trump has to back everything that he says. It's funny that you're accusing me of being essentialist because I feel like every statement that I make is being criticized in an incredibly essentialist way."
And he called
So like,
the judiciary fascistic on the first reason, which was
uh, because they back Trump and Trump is a fascist. And again,
okay.
this is just like, this is again, there's a problem here because the judiciary rejected all of Trump's claims to try and overturn the election.
That is true. And there's also his first appointment has really bucked the party line on a lot of these cases. For Neil Gorsuch, I think.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be super familiar with what the
I
judiciary.
think it
Has
would be
done.
Neil Gorsuch has been the one that's bucked them the most, and it keeps pissing off conservatives. And Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh both pissed off conservatives a lot because of the not backing the election nonsense. They didn't even back a lot of other nonsensical bullshit. But
Yeah. Also, just to throw Vaush a little bone here.
what about the
If
word
I had,
almost there? What do you think of the word almost? Somebody brought that
okay,
up
so
immediately in chat.
sure. Here's a problem with a lot of like Vaush purposefully, and this isn't just Vaush. This is a lot of people. Basically anybody who's optics minded and does politics, they will tend to soften their language. But the exact same idea is being communicated. So like it, when he says that, because they almost to a man, right? I mean, the bare minimum like implication there is that it's 80%, right? I mean, it's like a very, very large percentage of the judiciary that's just like backing everything that he says. And
Hmm.
no matter how you want to interpret that statement, it's not true.
So you're saying that the
Even
conservative
the
justices did not back 80% of like cases that Trump would want to go a certain way.
Yeah, like, I mean, how many, I know there was like more than 50 election related lawsuits that were filed by Trump or the Republicans, and I think
Well, the
he won
Supreme
like
Court
one of
doesn't
them.
hear all of those. They only hear like one. They like
Does
bring
the
it. Did the Supreme
does the
Court
ju
hear on all 50?
does the judiciary only apply to the Supreme Court, or does it apply to, the judicial branch generally?
Well, when it comes to the judiciary, of course, there's other like courts, but he didn't appoint everybody in all those courts, and you would have to specifically look at the Trump appointees because he did a lot of appointees on the
Yeah.
local government.
Yeah, so I read an article that said that at least 9 of the election challenges were ruled on by, Trump-appointed judges, and he lost all of them.
Okay,
It's like the
but that's not the Supreme Court though, right?
it's not, but I'm okay, again, I'm not 100% sure, I'm only like 85% confidence on this statement, but I'm
Okay.
85% confident he was not just talking about the Supreme Court. This was talking about the judiciary generally. I believe him and Pisco were having a conversation, um, about, the number of fascists in the judiciary, and I think they were specifically talking about Trump-appointed judges.
Hmm.
It's very difficult for me to fact check this in real time, but I am somewhat confident on that statement.
Okay. Okay. We can move on. Okay. So the next one is format. Now this one, okay, this one's brutal because there's some people who are trying to bring me other Sam Harris quotes from other videos to try to be like, haha, got him or something. That literally doesn't matter.
Yeah,
And if the reason it doesn't matter to me is because he's watching this video, and if I watched a Steven Crowder video where he like argued in favor of unions, but I snipped out the one part of that video where he was like, unions suck, but he was pretending to be like anti-union or something. If this happened in some mystical land that'll never be, that'd be pretty bad. Obviously, like including the full context, and there's multiple instances here where it's very clear that like he is making a systematic argument. Samus brings up the system multiple times. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
that Vaush watched 6 minutes of an over 1 hour thing and basically clip chipped.
Yeah. And so I have two things to say here. One is that a lot of people are trying to use different definitions for systemic racism. I'm using Vaush's definition for systemic racism, which very, very clearly applies to my argument. And that is proven by the fact that Vaush completely owned this section. So he responded and he just said I was right about. He said that this is the thing that I was most right about in the video, and he just completely owned it and said that I was right. I think his exact quote was that I took him to task. So
yep. you literally this right here, this back and forth here was brutal. I mean, you basically just tore it apart, and it wasn't hard because he only. I mean, if you had two people and one person read 6% of the textbook and the other person read 100%, you just had so much to work with. It wouldn't be that difficult. Yeah, I'm happy he owned up to it. I didn't actually see his response. Where did he put his response?
I don't know that he put it anywhere. Someone else. I could send you the clip, but somebody else put it up.
I would like to see it if you could throw it my way. Actually, I haven't seen it before.
I'll go find it. I think it's in my watch history, so it shouldn't take me very long to get. Yeah, here it is.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, if I just completely agree with you on the section, I guess I could just play a little bit for chat, if that's okay with you, quick.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
Okay.
You technically watched it, but if you were to go back and watch the video Vaush covered on its own, you'd likely feel you were experiencing it for the first time. We're going to be looking at one of Vaush's videos that responds to a podcast by Sam Harris. Vaush only watches 6 minutes of Sam Harris's 113-minute podcast, or roughly 5% of the content, so 95% of the context is missing. Keep this in the back of your mind, because nearly all of Vaush's claims about Harris can be refuted with context from the other 107 minutes. It's also worth pointing out that Vaush is responsible for what he does with his platform. Vaush could have either listened to the whole podcast beforehand to address things with context, or gone over the whole thing, or not covered it at all. If it is the case that Vaush cherry-picked a small segment and misrepresented Harris's arguments, there's no excuse for that. Vaush chose to cover it on stream, and Vaush chose to post the video, so any misrepresentations are Vaush's responsibility. There's one thing to clear up before we get into the content: the distinction between interpersonal and systemic racism.
Okay, so let me just skip through this, and you can see the contradictions here.
Sense of systemic racism. One in particular should drive the point home.
As I've already acknowledged, there is a legacy of racism in the United States that we are still struggling to outgrow. That is obvious. There are real racists out there. And there are ways in which racism became institutionalized a long time ago. Many of you will remember that during the crack epidemic, the penalties for crack and powder cocaine were quite different.
The thing is, people are trying to debate the word institutionalized here. Sam Harris used the word. He uses the word institutionalized. Racism has become institutionalized. I can't think of a more clear way you could possibly say it. Right there, it's like, so he was Vaush made the assertion. He wasn't saying that racism was institutional. He says racism is institutional. And it's just like this again and again and again and again and again for this whole section. So I have no criticism, just like good work.
Yeah. I forgot what I was gonna say. Don't worry about it.
No problem. Okay. So the next section, and then I'll get through this section. Then somebody sent me a cheat sheet. People are doing what you do with the massive 14-page, 19-page document. And I can just go through this quick and just shoot these at you if you're fine with that.
Yeah, sure.
Because I don't want to since I didn't get to see stochastic terrorism and morality, because of already previously stated issues. And I heard fascism doesn't matter, it's a meme, so I'll just leave that alone.
Yeah, the fascism section is probably the least important section in the entire video.
Morality, stochastic terrorism. So we're going to do this part, and then I'll move over to the cheat sheet. Okay, so right here, equivocation. So what you're talking about here is basically the Nazi scale, which I gotta say, brilliant scale here.
Really? That's one of the things people have criticized me the most for.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah. So some people take issue with the order I put things, which, to be honest, I didn't put an enormous amount of thought as to which of these things are slightly.
Oh, I just thought it was funny. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. My idea was just to show that there is a range and that you shouldn't have one word for all of these things. That was my point. Keep in mind, I didn't think that everyone was going to be watching this and pausing it and picking it apart to the degree that it is. So if I was to remake that, I would probably redo it a little bit. But just the idea is that there's a difference between someone who's trying to violently establish an ethno-state and someone who makes an offhand cringe comment, right? That's sort of the essence, and that you shouldn't just have one word that you throw at everyone who does something that's objectionable, right?
Yeah. So I guess my questions to you would be, so does he use the word Nazi or white nationalist from any of these people? Because it seemed like you were on the word Nazi specifically in the section.
Okay, so with Felix,
Well, not with Felix. I'm thinking of Ben Shapiro and the rest of them. I'll get to Felix next.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So hold on a second. I made a Reddit response to this. So, okay. So I'll read off the Ben Shapiro clips, and you can let me know if it's reasonable to think that there's anything else that he's implying. If you do, I'll accept it. But to me, it's pretty clear. Okay.
Yep.
So Ben Shapiro is a fascist and a white nationalist. Ben Shapiro spreads Nazi talking points. Ben Shapiro isn't a Nazi, but, well, however, the only categorical
Wait. Can I? What comes after that? However, I am curious.
I don't. I would have to go check. I don't know.
Okay.
It's just. I mean, it's just like the way that you phrase that, right? You're making an implication, right? The only categorical difference between Ben Shapiro's beliefs and Nazism are anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Ben Shapiro is a man whose entire life is pushing out euphemisms for Nazism and fascism. If you are actually interested in stopping neo-Nazism, which Ben here most certainly is not, and Ben, oh man, I don't even know if I can say this honestly on your stream.
Can you just DM it to me?
Sure.
That last one I think is it's pretty over the top.
Yeah, it's a really bad quote.
Yeah, that one and the one before it are the two that I don't like the most. I mean, like, I have problems with it. Okay, so I probably have one of the most poor opinions of Ben Shapiro you're gonna find on political Twitch. I would say even worse than your average person, and the reason why is because I've covered his foreign policy beliefs before, and his foreign policy beliefs is really where he gets like disgusting about what his policies are for Israel-Palestine. His statements about how Arabs live in open sewage, and like his article he wrote talking about the evil within the Palestinian. Can I read you a few lines from this quick?
Sure.
Okay, one second. Evil Palestinian, the article.
And just for the record, I'm not defending Ben Shapiro.
Oh, I know. I just wanted to just explain my answer a little bit, right? Palestine. Evil. The radical evil of the Palestinian Arab. Okay. The battle over the Palestinian Arab territory and the Gaza Strip is a battle between extremists and more radical extremists. Last week, the extremists led by Holocaust denier and Fatah strongman Mohammed Abbas were ousted in a bloody coup by the religious extremists, Islamist terror groups Hamas. One second. Okay, here it is. Yet, instead of allowing Fatah and Hamas to suck it out, Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice informed newly appointed Abbas frontman Prime Minister Salam Fayyad that America would resume aid to Palestinian Authority. I told the Prime Minister that we want to work with his government and support his efforts to enforce the rule of law and to ensure a better life for the Palestinian people. Ah, the fabled Palestinian people. The Palestinian people who simply want a better life. The Palestinian people, who President George W. Bush repeatedly informed us, long for a society in which they can raise their children in peace and hope. The Palestinian people, who support, fund, and execute suicide bombings. Palestinian people who dress their toddlers in bomb belts and then take family snapshots. The Palestinian people who cheered on September 11th as the World Trade Center towers fell. The Palestinian people who followed terrorist extraordinaire Yasser Arafat, supported Saddam Hussein, shredded the blooming rose that was once Christian Lebanon, and almost toppled the Western-friendly Jordanian monarchy. The Palestinian people who destroy relics on the Temple Mount, openly call for the destruction of the State of Israel, ally with Syria and Iran, and elect Hamas. The Palestinian people who teach their children that the Holocaust is a fairy tale and that Jews routinely poison Palestinian candy. The Palestinian people who stage injuries in order to solicit Western media sympathy and then roar madly as they hold up their hands, red with the blood of murdered Israeli soldiers. The idea of an entire population, listen to this, entire population corrupted by bloodthirsty anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism violates modern ideas of politics. So, by the way, like every paragraph following this is literally just him saying the same thing. Like the next paragraph, the problem runs deeper than a few figureheads. The Palestinian Arab population is rotten to the core. Like,
I don't care about the context. That is so yikes. Oh my god.
This article right here, like, completely like I don't want to say red pilled me, but like completely like blue pilled me on like Ben Shapiro as somebody who like genuinely like cares about like human dignity in life. Now, this is, to be frank, an older article. This was during the Bush administration, the end of the Bush administration, but during the Bush administration. But he actually keeps a list of things like that's not cool with him, like that he.
Oh, that's all on his list.
And as far as I know, this is not on his list.
Oh my God.
He has a list that the statement about Arabs and sewage is on the list. I tried to check it, and the last time I checked it, it wasn't on there. He could have added it since then. Maybe someone brought it to his attention.
Okay. If I knew that quote, I would not have used him as an example. Wow.
So I don't want to say he's a Nazi. I think the word Nazi for any Jewish person is a terrible insult. But I do think, at the very least, he is an extreme bigot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just revolting beyond words.
Yeah. So when it comes specifically to Ben Shapiro, it's hard to make me hear somebody say this person's a white nationalist or one of these things, and me to not kind of just, you know, when I read stuff like this, it's hard for me to believe, you know? Or, I mean, we can point to his old statement on George Zimmerman and the person who, you know, George Zimmerman shot, which was, what was it? It was like, today is it was the anniversary of his birthday, and he said something along the lines of, today he would be 20 if he didn't decide to assault an innocent person and bang their head into the pavement. And that was like the what was his name? He was the young man with the Skittles.
You actually forgot Trayvon Martin?
Yeah, sorry. I do. I'm terrible.
Okay.
I'm terrible.
I didn't know if this was like a bit. Sorry.
It was not. Why would that be a bit? Oh my God.
I don't know.
It was not a bit. It's Trayvon Martin. It's just the police kill a lot of unarmed black people, and people kill a lot of unarmed black people. It's a sad reality.
Yeah. Okay. I probably shouldn't have used Ben Shapiro as an example.
Yeah.
That was really sickening.
So yes, this for me, and the thing is, I would also say, well, he hasn't published any articles like this recently. True, but the thing is, people get really good at, you know, keeping their opinions to themselves. But his political positions on Israel-Palestine haven't changed. If they significantly moved, then I could maybe have some inclination that maybe he's changed since then. But they haven't. They've stayed consistent.
Yeah. Oh man.
Okay, so I just wanted to go through that specific example because I'm just I can send you the link on this, by the way.
I trust you, but yeah, if you send it, I'll read it. I mean, like I don't know much about.
You can read
Ben
the whole
Shapiro.
thing, and the context doesn't get better. It's literally just him.
No,
like,
there's no context that could possibly justify that. There could be a book before that, and yeah. Unless the immediate preceding statement is, I'm about to say the most disgusting thing in the world, and if anyone ever says something like this, you should never associate with them or something like. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's really sickening.
Yeah, it's really. Oof.
Oh man.
Listen to this. But in the end, the blame must lie with the Palestinian Arabs themselves. They have accepted their role with relish. They are as responsible for the government's long-standing evil as the Germans were for the Nazis.
Oh my God.
And honestly, that's the least bad statement out of all of it.
Yeah. I don't know what to say.
Anyway,
it's so bad.
He was 23, by the way, when this was put out. 23. So 3 years older than me. So
yeah, I mean, I said some yikes stuff when I was in my early 20s, but like nothing vaguely. Yeah. Wow. That's so bad.
Yeah. So there was this guy, and let me see who else. What was the next one, by the way, on the next list?
Oh, I can. Hold on, let me pull up the script. I can check.
By the way, Vaush, if you're listening, you're supposed to be playing Psychonauts.
So the list, I believe, is Ben Shapiro, PewDiePie, Sagar and Jetty, Sam Harris, James Lindsay, and Jordan Peterson.
Okay, so let's start at the top of that list again.
Ben Shapiro.
Okay, we already dealt with that, so you're fine with that, okay? Right?
PewDiePie.
PewDiePie. PewDiePie, I don't know if you ever called him a Nazi. He did say alt-right at one point. Is that correct?
Okay, so
did he call him a Nazi, or am I not?
I
remember he did use the word alt-right, but never the word Nazi.
Okay, and I also think that PewDiePie is a member of the alt-right, some kind of reactionary fascist neo-Nazi, maybe.
Oh, can you send me the quote?
So it's like,
can you just send it to me quick?
Sure.
Okay.
And by the way, when in the part where I say that these people are being called Nazis, I clarified that either they were being directly called a Nazi or like the accusation was unmistakable. In other words, if you were to say this, what is being communicated is quite clear, right? So like when I read that,
I think that's the strongest point to be here is just say alt-right, because he does say, I also think that PewDiePie is a member of the alt-right. And then some kind of maybe one of these things, maybe. I think just sticking with the term alt-right is strong here, because I'm just going to agree with you that calling PewDiePie like a member of the alt-right, or like throwing that at PewDiePie, is not something I agree with. I don't think there's enough evidence to like make me want to put these claims out there that he is a member of the alt-right. So yeah, I would say that that's like a little far. That's from 2 years ago,
sure,
I think.
But,
yeah, that's actually from 2 years ago and 5 days.
Yeah, that's not the only video though. So the thing is, there were 4 videos on this.
Okay.
And there were like 20 claims that are related to this. And there's stuff like, I mean, like, I don't remember if he directly stated, but he definitely very strongly implied that PewDiePie is like responsible for the Christchurch shooting.
You had a list of his arguments that he made specifically.
Yeah, I can send it to you if you want.
Okay. When you said he heavily implied, are you talking about like the idea of like stochastic terrorism, or like the idea that people can send people down pipelines?
Yeah. So that was an argument that was cut from the stochastic terrorism section, was that like, he accused Felix of stochastic terrorism for wearing a hoodie, right?
Okay. By the way, as far as I know,
shooting.
Vaush has admitted that he was wrong about PewDiePie and that he overreacted, right?
I'm not aware of that. So I saw there's a clip that from, I believe, approximately a year ago, maybe 8 months ago, somewhere in there, where he's talking to Destiny. And Destiny says PewDiePie is not a Nazi, and you can see Vaush like almost respond to it and stop.
I mean, that's a little.
Yeah. I mean,
that's unbelievably
all.
splitting hairs. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I was just saying that that's the only time I'm familiar with of him referencing the situation outside of these 4 videos. But I mean, so people are making a really big deal out of the fact that these things were a long time ago. I mean, I guess that I don't see a huge problem from using clips from like a year and a half ago. I don't see a huge problem with that. And beyond that, like.
Also, I'm just being told that right now, Vaush just said on stream, apparently he's watching. Vaush just said on stream that he does walk that back.
Okay, sure. Cool.
Okay. I mean, like, sure. Ultimately, the main reason you wanted to make this video was that so like Vaush like would like accept critique,
yeah, of course.
And maybe improve.
Yeah, exactly. If he that's fantastic. So like I don't want Vaush's career to be ruined or something. Like the best possible scenario for me would just be that he took the critiques and that he improved his rhetoric. I mean that's the best possible case scenario. So if he walks that back, that's fantastic.
Oh, okay. Let me get back to So I basically would let's just say that half of the people that you listed I disagree with, or like there's some amount of people there that I do think that I could dig up something like Ben Shapiro and say that, but that still leaves a decent amount of people on that list possibly who should not have had that thrown at them. Which ones would you give me the most evident? I seeded PewDiePie, so I we'll just like draw it there that there's people that he's thrown this label at, like Count Dankula or PewDiePie, that shouldn't have been thrown in that way. Right.
So like Jordan Peterson, he accused him of the JQ of being far right and spreading neo-Nazi conspiracy theories.
What was the accusation based off of?
Okay, so the accusation was based off of Jordan Peterson's criticism of like, this is gonna take some establishment. It's gonna take me a minute to explain this. I'm sorry, but this is complicated.
Don't worry. I got time.
So there's 4 different things that often get conflated: Marxism, the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, postmodernism, and then critical theory proper. So critical theory proper probably starts somewhere in the neighborhood of the 80s to 90s. Before that, there was postmodernism, which I believe is largely in like the 60s to 80s neighborhood. The Frankfurt School of Critical Theory is in the neighborhood of the 30s to 40s, and then obviously Marxism is back with Marx, right? And Jordan Peterson has something of a problem of conflating all of these things. So I can explain the connections if you want. It's kind of complicated, but basically, Jordan Peterson draws a very strong connection between all of these things. and he calls this. I believe he uses the term explicitly cultural Marxism. Um, and Vaush conflates this with a different conception of cultural Marxism that is a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory. But the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory is considerably different than what Peterson says. And not that I want to defend
Can
Jordan
I just say, I have never, the only time I've ever heard cultural Marxism was literally somebody either with a shaved head or a an anime profile picture.
Yeah. So let me explain what he's getting at, because it's stupid, but it's not JQ, right? Okay. So Marxism is this really, really complicated thing. That's why there's these enormous books that no one reads.
True.
It's this incredibly complicated thing.
Get into the truth on this stream.
People very, very, very traumatically oversimplify this. So if you were to just like try and distill Marxism down into like a sentence, which is just a stupid thing that no one should do, what Marxism would look something like is like class-oriented struggle or something like that. Like class consciousness might be a good way to put it. But obviously, if anyone knows anything about Marxism, you know that you're missing out on like literally three enormous books no one reads, full of details of complicated stuff. That is not an appropriate distillation of Marxism. But that is how some people see it. So the idea of cultural Marxism that Peterson is putting forward is basically the idea that instead of being a class struggle, now what is happening is you have a cultural or an identity-based struggle. So you have the same sort of thing where you have an underclass of people who are being oppressed, but instead of the oppression being the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, it would be something like the LGBTQ community versus what could be called the white supremacist structure of society. So the idea that the incentives are different for the ruling, like I don't know exactly how to put this, like the ruling elites in the structures of society.
Can I ask you a question? Just a question.
Sorry,
I can cut through all of this. Did he use the term correctly, or did he use the term incorrectly? When I'm talking about Jordan Peterson. Like,
he's definitely not referring to the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory. He's
using that. I was just asking. So he used the wrong term then.
Yeah, so he's trying to equivocate. Yeah,
but we don't need to explain it any further. I got this from here. So if let's say that I am talking to you, right, and I say, and this is a thing that I actually did when I was a kid, and let's say I thought you did something bad in a video game, and when I was really little, I didn't understand this shit, and I heard it to use dox, the word dox, like doxing, used incorrectly, so I just said, this guy screwed me over, I'm gonna go dox him, and it would get me banned from servers, and I was always really confused, right? Because I thought dox meant you would go report them, and I was completely wrong. And so if I use that term wrong to you, and I say, hey, DoomerPolitics, I'm gonna dox you, and then you're like, whoa, what the fuck? And you go around like, Dylan's a doxer. Now, you're wrong, right? But if I'm using the word incorrectly, who does the blame lie with?
Okay, so I'm not cutting Jordan Peterson any credit here, okay? Yeah. So let's try and put this let's try and put this very charitably. I hope
my questions are being assumed as like charitable or that
no. I'm trying to not be Jordan Peterson's conversation with Slavoj Žižek made him look very uneducated.
Yep.
Let's put it that way. Okay. And I think that there is a fundamental misunderstanding there about these concepts. And here's the thing. I don't claim to understand Marxism because it's really complicated, but at least I understand that, right? I wouldn't claim to talk about exactly what it is in detail because it is this really big complicated thing with these huge books I haven't read, right? But he sort of weaves it into this narrative. And I don't think cultural Marxism, he usually uses the term postmodern neo-Marxist, which is, I don't even want to get into how stupid that term is. But yeah, so Peterson's idea is nothing to do with this neo-Nazi conspiracy theory. It's just this idea that, it's like this stupid distillation of Marxism into this like very, very, very simple concept that loses all of the nuance and meaning of these ideas. And then it just like changes class struggle to like identity struggle, right? And like the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory is like literally the JQ, like the Jews are taking over the government, and all this nonsense. So yeah, these are very, 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 very different things.
So I guess from my perspective, like, okay, I don't think, and I have no reason to think really, I have no reason to think from his behavior, that he is a Nazi or a white supremacist, right? If I did not see that statement, I would have literally zero reason to say that he's a Nazi or a white supremacist, right? Zero reason. If I did, though, I would have been like, yo, this feels like some JQ stuff. If he used the term cultural Marxism like that, I'd be like, whoa, why is he dropping cultural Marxism? It'd be like if I was like talking about let's say I just wanted to say, hey, I'm excited for White Boy Summer, and then I used the word Lebensraum about White Boy Summer, right? Then people are going to be like, whoa, why is Dylan doing that? Now, I don't mean it like that. I'm just uneducated. I just using a word terribly wrong. You can't put basically really much blame on people for looking at me making a statement like that, or Jordan Peter using a word incorrectly and being like, that feels like some JQ stuff. If right now I said, like, when it comes to so-and-so minority group, you know, all I'm saying is like, and then I make a comment about ovens, right? Now,
that's So
you see what I'm saying? Like,
I understand what you're saying, but I think that Nazi is a very serious term, and that you should be quite serious.
Did he say he was a Nazi, or did he just like the JQ?
Well, I mean, JQ being far right and spreading neo-Nazi conspiracy theories, like,
okay. I mean, I could say that he was wrong. I would say he was wrong about it, but cultural Marxism is like the idea of like the spreading of culture. It is a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory, and so I don't think this was like out of Vaush being bad faith. If Jordan Peterson was using a neo-Nazi word incorrectly while talking about his theories, right? If I heard some like right-winger say something similarly and I was in the same position of Vaush, I probably would have done the same thing. Now, could I have done more research to be like, make sure he's using this and digging this up and doing it? That is true. But I feel like this is something I could easily just be like, I feel like that one deserves a pass if he's using the word incorrectly there.
Sure, there's like a charitable interpretation where it doesn't seem that bad, and I agree with that. I also think that we should be pretty careful when we accuse people of like JQ. To me, that's a very serious accusation.
I do agree with you, and basically, and that's why I disagree with the PewDiePie stuff. I disagree with the Count Dankula stuff, and I think he's wrong on both of those. It's just this one, if somebody slips up and looks like a racist because they use racist terms made by racists while talking about their ideology,
a curd.
I'm not gonna fault people for thinking that dude's like a racist or is doing something like that.
I understand that. Yeah.
In a broader context of Jordan Peterson, if I heard that, I'd be like, link, source, and I would dig and do my best to find out. It's just, you get where I'm coming from. I think I've made my point clear.
Yeah, I understand. That makes sense.
Hey, Old School Otaku, thanks for the tier 1. I appreciate that. Is there anything you wanted to clarify up to this point that we've talked about that you just wanted to make sure that like you clarified, or anything you just wanted to like, double check on to be like, okay, I just want to clarify this or that? Not
really. I'm good.
Okay, let me see if there's anything else in the Equivocation section that I wanted to talk about. All the reasons, Vaush, I just want to double down, like the reasons that were being given, like the ADL and everything. It's just very silly, and you made very good points there when it comes. Yeah. Also, thank you for not showing the manifesto. I appreciate that. Okay, misinformation. Now, this is a section that I want to talk about in a broader context. Misinformation on our platform is so unbelievably prevalent.
I agree. I think I've said this on like 4 separate streams now. This is by no means a Vaush exclusive problem. And I think what I said on Chud's stream was like, maybe Vaush spreads a bit more misinformation than average. But it's not. I do think so. But it's not nearly the scale of some of these other problems. Like misinformation. So this video started off as a broader commentary on online politics generally. It wasn't, and like the initial idea wasn't just to excoriate Vaush. So and these are the 2 sections that like are pretty clear there. Are the format section, which is basically a critique of React Andes, and then the misinformation section, which is just something that almost everyone on the platform does to one degree or another, right? So there is one thing that Vaush does that if he stopped doing this, I wouldn't think he was considerably worse in terms of misinformation than other people. And that is that he says some really incendiary stuff when anything happens with the police, like really, really bad stuff. I can't let him off the hook for that. It's really, really bad. If he stopped doing that, I would no longer say that he was spreading more misinformation than other people, because like it's like an example is like the GME situation. I think he made a wrong statement, but like he was nowhere near as bad as some other people, right? That Jimmy situation was really, really, really bad. And yeah, it's not like, oh, so I'm going to try and be charitable and give Vaush credit. I did a lot of fact checking. Vaush said a lot of things I thought were wrong. A lot of them were not wrong. So like there was one claim he made where he was like, something to the effect of being a taxi driver is as dangerous as being a cop. And I was like, bullshit. I checked and no, he's actually correct. So like the proper interpretation of that is like being a taxi driver is terrifyingly dangerous, not that being a cop is like safe. But I like went and looked up multiple studies to confirm, and it's like, yeah, that was straight up correct. Another one was there was a video about Thomas Sowell, and there was some Thomas Sowell made some claim about affirmative action, the views that African Americans had on
Can I
affirmative
respond to
action.
something quick in chat?
Sure.
He did a lot of fact checking, yet he couldn't find Ben's comments on Palestine. Let me be clear. That article is some like deep digging stuff. It took me a decent amount of time to find that article. If you don't have the exact keywords, you're not going to find it. If you just look up Ben Shapiro racist, you're going to get a bunch of different. That article, like the one I was reading that was so unbelievably explicit, is actually something you got to dig for. The thing's from 2007. It's from he was like 23. I mean, I was 6 when he wrote that article.
Yeah, like people are being, I think, something that I think is kind of unreasonable is the burden of research people are putting on me. People are expecting me to know.
You gotta
everything.
expect people to have a high barrier if you're doing this about another creator on the internet.
I appreciate that, but it's not
hey,
really
look,
appropriate.
Take it from me, okay? Take it from me.
Yeah, it's just like people will be like, "Why didn't you include this video?" It's like I can't. The dude does a lot of videos. I can't watch all of them, you know. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I tried to do a lot of research. I try to be responsible, right? Expecting me to see literally every single thing under the sun, I don't know, man. That doesn't seem very. Yeah,
I do want to say, by the way, most people have accepted your video. I think, like with open arms. Like if I look at the dislike ratio, if I see how most people have accepted it, it's gotten to the point where the person who the video's about is accepting many of your criticisms. I just want you to know, like it's a loud minority who are completely just like dismissing you.
I understand. I'm not used to having this kind of attention, and it's really difficult to look at I'll get people DMing me all the time, being like, the video is really good. I hope you make more videos, stuff like that, and being really positive. Some content creators messaged me today and were like very, very positive, like in a way that I never would have expected, like really, really positive. But yeah, it's just this human nature thing. It's hard. You see that bad comment, and it's hard to focus on anything else. But yeah, so
it'll sometimes unironically I'll look at it and I'll like debate for like a good 2 to 3 minutes if I should respond. It's weird how that stuff affects you.
It's a problem because like I like want criticism. I want to know how to make a better video. But then you look at the comments and someone will have like 4 paragraphs and like 3 citations, and you go check and it just like doesn't change anything. Yeah, and they'll be like, your video is garbage because like nothing. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so in terms of Vaush's response, I've said this on a bunch of other streams. I think it was pretty reasonable. I have no reason to believe that Vaush's response was like ridiculous. I think he was being honest. I think he accepted a lot of the criticism. It was a better response than I expected, and
that's good.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin Vaush's career. If he takes the criticism and improves his rhetoric, we're good. I'm not like this obsessive Vaush hater. To be quite frank, I just don't want to. I've seen so much of his content. I just don't want to see any more of it. Right. But if the dude can not do these certain things, we're good. I'm not like holding this enormous grudge that will never go away. He seems to be taking a lot of it in and trying to improve, and that's great. That's all I could ever possibly hope for.
Yep. One response to something in the chat. Guys trying to say Vaush hated the ADL based out of context clip that was clearly meant to be a joke. Okay, let's say it was a joke. That still would not counter the fact that PewDiePie withdrawing his money from the ADL was completely reasonable, considering the ADL was making statements about him that he didn't like. If I gave money to the Trevor Project, then the Trevor Project's like, we like most of the queers except Dylan, right? I'd be like, well, you know what? I think I want to take my money back. I think I'm going to withdraw my donation. So I again, even if it was a joke, about the SDL, the SDL, no, not socialism done left, the ADL, then that still doesn't counter the primary point that was not evidence of anything.
Yeah, and I object to that characterization, by the way. I don't think it was a joke, but I mean, obviously you can't know these things for sure. I got no impression that that was a joke.
Yeah. So I want to. People keep bringing this up in chat, so I bring it up now. The title. Obviously, it was very flamboyant.
It's a
very,
provocative title.
It's
Let's
very
not
provocative,
skirt around
extremely
that. Yeah.
provocative. Yeah. Can I ask you why you chose this title?
Sure. So there's a bunch of reasons.
To remind chat, the title is Vaush is unironically evil.
Yeah. So let's just own the most obvious reason. Provocative titles get attention. I'm not going to pretend like that wasn't part of it. Obviously, that was part of it. You want people to watch your videos. Look, it has been very successful. The title worked. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that wasn't part of it. But it's not clickbait in the sense that it's misleading. There is a part of that I think is genuine. Like I do think that a lot of the stuff involving the police is really, really, really bad. The stuff about conservatives, not all of it, but some of it is like really, really bad. And some of the stuff that I include in the video. Okay, so so something that I said earlier is like, if your idea of evil is like Hitler or Stalin or something, obviously Vaush isn't Hitler or Stalin. I don't want Vaush to get killed. I don't want Vaush to be in jail, right? I don't want someone to go break his legs. I don't wish harm on him as a person. But when I'm looking at people in online Twitch politics, I don't see anyone that has said more things that could potentially have consequences. Let's put it that way. And I tried to make this clear in the outro. Obviously I didn't make it clear enough. Everyone has their own moral intuition. Everyone has their own concept of what is or isn't evil. And there's no way, like a lot of people don't believe that evil exists, right? There's no way I'm necessarily going to be able to convince people that have a very different idea of what evil is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I made a reasonable case as to why I would find him to be that way.
Let me ask you a question. Upon reflection, whether you think you made a good case for it or not, do you think Vaush is unironically evil?
Okay, so
do you think that's good faith to say?
Okay, so here's what I'll say about that. If we take the idea of Vaush as like his body of content since he started working, yeah, I do basically think that's true. I'll defend that. If you're talking about Vaush today, there are certain ways in which I think it's sort of inarguable that he's improved. Like I said, that the way that he approached that CRT debate with that TikTok dude, he never would have done that a year earlier. It was legitimately an incredibly good faith conversation. So like that's one. And again, the prime case fascism conversation is also recent, but I'm totally open to the idea that Vaush is like really legitimately trying to be better faith in his approach to these things. Some of these criticisms are less true recently. So this isn't like an essentializing statement. I'm not saying that this will always be the case, but I am going to defend the idea that some of these things are really, really, really bad. What I will say is that I do have like hope that will change.
So I guess the first thing I would say is, first, if you think he was evil, if you look at all of his work, but today he's improving, he's being more good faith, and I seem to agree that there's more recent conversations. I definitely on like Tim Pool's show, for example, with Charlie.
Yeah, that was really good faith. Yeah,
really good faith conversations. He's accepting the mistakes that he's made. He's accepting them, and he's exceeding your expectations. So, but you want to judge him based on like basically the history. If you include the history, that he is still unironically evil, which, I mean, evil is almost like a meme word, right? It's like the type of thing you throw at like your Hitlers and your war criminals and your stuff. But I guess you're trying to say it's relative, but even if it is relative, which I don't know if a word like that is relative.
It actually kind of, so I looked it up it up on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. There's like at least 3 commonly accepted conceptions of evil, and one of them is very, very broad. So yeah, I mean, it is like it's.
I mean, that's. Yeah. Do you think that's good faith though? There's 3 definitions of evil, and one of them is super broad. So I'm going to use the super broad one. It's like, here's an example. I'm taking a class right now on urban explosions, riots, and the first day they gave me 4 definitions of a riot. Let's see if I can actually pull this up from my textbook quick, right? Because it's really important that you have a definition of a riot to like you know, talk about riots. But the thing is, defining a riot is very difficult because it will completely like affect like the laws in your country and how cops interact with riots, etc. And like how you will be persecuted in court. Here's the 4 definitions. A violent disturbance of the peace by crowd, an outbreak of violent civil disorder or lawlessness. That's the first one. A violent public disorder, specifically a tumultuous disturbance of the public peace by 3 or more persons assembled together and acting with common intent. Third one. The tumultuous disturbance of the public peace by an unlawful assembly of 3 or more persons and the execution of some private objects. And 4, a noisy, violent public disorder caused by a group of crowd or persons, as by crowds protesting against another group, a government policy, etc. in the streets. This 4th one, if I really wanted to, I could say a concert is a riot. And so if I was to say that, I don't know, like if I said so-and-so band caused a riot, by using these definitions. Like, technically, according to that last definition from my textbook, it is true, and your job is to literally pick the one you agree with most. But if you're using the most overly broad definition to use a word that's extremely heavy and labeled, like really heavy to like really hit home, and you also agree that this is a person that's changing and getting better and is more good faith now,
okay, so,
and like it feels like you're reaching.
Okay, so let me offer an olive branch. Would you accept the title Vaush was unironically evil?
I don't think I would, but it's probably the best I'm gonna get.
All right, I'll change it right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a cute arc, by the way. He was evil. Now he was evil. I think that's adorable, actually.
Yeah, it's changed.
Oh, look at that. You know what? You gotta. Hey, some of you in chat are not happy with that, but look. Some of these are zero-sum games, and you gotta do some Abraham peace accords, okay? Right now, I'm the Israeli government. He's Arafat. We're trying to find a solution, okay?
Jesus,
we're doing what we can. Wonderful. So I'm gonna do something I don't usually do. And since I didn't watch much, I watched some of Dehumanization, and we can talk about it if you want to. But sure. I think what I'm going to do for the last 3 segments is just tell people to go watch your video directly and put it in chat. And so they can get it for themselves. I think that's, you're just starting out. I want to get you as much support as you can get. Okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
Dope. So, Dehumanization. So this is a section that specifically has to do with his communication with like right-wingers, people on that. Is there any really egregious examples you want to show me? Like something you could pull out and be like, look at this shit. This is terrible.
The right-winger stuff?
Yeah, the right-winger stuff, the dehumanization.
Yeah, so like any of the examples at the end, I think they're all like really bad.
Any examples at the end of the segment or at the end of the list?
The end of the segment. So
okay.
I can read them off.
Okay, and now I can just play them quick, okay?
Sure.
Okay, dope. Be right back.
What does Vaush have to say about all this?
All of conservatism is built upon the exact same social principles that are perpetuated today by neo-Nazis. I understand this may sound a little bit facetious. Social principles that are perpetuated today.
So is he careful to say conservatives or conservatism, as in an ideology?
For which quote?
Like all of conservatism is built upon exact same social. No, I'm asking you generally because like if there's things like conservatives are neo-Nazis. Or conservatism is built like
and Republicans want to do that because Republicans are racist. A lot of people in the Republican Party probably just want to say the N-word and throw rocks at black people.
Well, I haven't finished this stuff. I was just asking about the conservatism one. Let me finish it.
I mean, yeah.
Like that apparently is really fucking intense. Let me finish this.
By neo-Nazis. I understand this may sound a little bit facetious, but I assure you I'm being entirely serious when I say this. American conservatives are fascists.
Now, I have been accused of being hyperbolic in this respect before, but I am not being. There is a large contingent of conservatives in this country, not all of them, but a large number of them, who just like it when black people are killed. And I think the first thing that we should learn from this story, I mean, what's the first thing we should learn here? Conservatives are evil? Great, easy, wow.
Okay, conservatives are evil. Okay, yeah, that's pretty.
And Republicans want to do that because Republicans are racist. I don't think neoconservatism and fascism are two like really, really distinct things. A lot of people in the Republican Party probably do.
The thing is, you can probably catch me doing a few of these times, and because what I'll do is sometimes I'll use words interchangeably, even though I criticize people doing it all the time. Where I'll be like Republican leadership, and I'll just say like Republicans, and then that includes a lot of people. Or when I say Republicans, I'm talking about like Republicans in the Senate and Congress. And so this is a mistake even I would probably have to bite the bullet on. And it's not like I am for example, breaking the decorum of the general country right now, where I have crossed the line, everybody else hasn't crossed, right? Or even Vaush, I would even say, hasn't crossed the line that everyone else has crossed. I would say that the rhetoric in this country generally is really bad, and I think it just seeps into all of us a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of like the main points I wanted to get at was that, um, like every single issue that comes up, it just turns into like a war, and it like for no reason. Like everyone just kind of hates each other, and I really wish it wasn't like that. Like so, so I didn't know there was a mask mandate, and I went to the grocery store, and someone came up and thanked me for not wearing a mask, as though I had like made a political statement just by trying to like make burritos. Like
Mhm.
it's just completely ridiculous that that's like the state that we're in. Like why would that be a political statement? You know, and it's like I would have worn a mask if I had known. I just been sitting in my house editing a video all, for like weeks. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous that that's at the point that we're at. And like every issue that comes up, it just like turns it like if the Democrats believe one thing, then the Republicans just instinctively believe the other thing. And it's because everyone just hates each other. And I really wish it wasn't like that. Um, I have a big problem with a lot of this rhetoric. Like, so some of the things that Vaush says, I don't entirely disagree with. Like,
Mhm.
if I had to construct my own definition of fascism, I don't think I would call Trump a fascist, but he's pretty close. I don't really take issue with that. But when you're making these statements about like all of Republicans, like I've had a lot of conservative friends, and I mean, if I'm being honest, it kind of offends me hearing some of these things. Um, and when I look at like Republican politicians, I don't like these people, but it, I think it would be best if we just didn't make these kind of statements. I legitimately think it's like unhealthy in a profound way, to be talking in this way, and all it does is it pushes people
Well,
away from each other.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let's say that something. Now, I'm not saying this is, but I just wanted to ask you this for like something I'm gonna ask later. Let's say something's true, but it's harmful. Should you say it, or should you give people shit for saying it?
I mean, so if you made like a really qualified statement, I can understand where this is going. Um,
Hmm?
but like, there's a range of ways that you can express things, right? Um, like for example, it's like if you heard that Jordan Peterson thing, sort of out of context, you just sort of heard that he said cultural Marxism, and you had heard about that concept. Uh, like you said, there is a legitimate interpretation where you could think that he was JQ, but it's like maybe don't go with the most extreme possible interpretation, right? I would, I don't know. I feel pretty strongly that we should try and use softer language when talking about people we disagree with. And,
Mhm.
and this isn't just this way, by the way. Like I've had all these arguments with my dad. He'll like use the phrase "the left." I'm like, there is no the left. Like all the fucking people on the left hate each other. Like, what are you talking about? Right? It's not like commies and sock dems and liberals get along. They really don't. And like this concept of like the left, the purpose of it is to create this like block, and you can take the worst members of it and just assign those characteristics to all of them. So like this is a way to like take the worst thing AOC has ever tweeted and like apply that to like a soccer mom. That's the
Mhm.
purpose of that term, and I really don't like that.
So I'll say that anytime if somebody if I'm gonna assume that these are all clipped in context and they're not out of context and jokey or whatever, right? I'll be as good faith as physically possible. And like if he says Republicans are racist, right? Like just point blank period like that, rhetoric like that, I do try to stray away from, and I think is harmful. I will say though, I do think there's a difference between saying Republicans are racist and the Republican Party is racist. Would you acknowledge that?
Yeah, but okay. I kind of have a problem with that because
Really?
what really matters to me is like the idea that goes into the mind of people who hear these things, and I don't think people will hear a substantial difference. So like this is
So
it's kind of like the definition thing in part one. Like yeah, if you pause it and you look at it, like there's a difference, but I think that the effect that it would have on people is very 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 similar. And
okay,
certainly there's
one
like a
second.
more
Yeah,
responsible
chat,
way.
it's
Yeah.
not the same thing because one has to do with the party. And easily, if I say,
Occurred is
for
occurred.
example, there's a lot of Democrats who don't like the Democratic Party. There's a lot of Republicans who don't like the Republican Party. And they're in that because they're trying to bring it in a certain direction they don't agree with. For example, there was conservatives, like I'll just say Justin Amash, even though he's not a Republican anymore, who were trying to bring it in a direction that was much different than the Trumpian direction, right? And so saying the Republican Party, where the party is, the party's beliefs, the party's platform, what the party overall pushes, is different than the individual cog in said machine, or individual who follow said party, even if they disagree with many of its principles. For example, there's a lot of people who I don't think have a racist bone in their body, but just care about tax cuts that much that they're willing to overlook that. And so I will say, so what I'm trying to get at here is I do think there's a distinct difference between saying the Republican Party and Republicans. And your thing is you don't think people hear the difference there. But I think that people, honestly, I hear this said by right-wingers all the time. The Democratic Party, da-da-da-da-da, which is very different than Democrats. I feel like I would hear, like, when I hear the Democratic Party, what I'm about to hear is a thing about Nancy Pelosi, it's a thing about Chuck Schumer, it's a thing about those people, right?
Okay, that's fair, yeah.
And when I hear the Democrats, what I'm about to hear is those Democrats are wearing masks and you're getting the fake vaccine. And the difference in those types of rhetoric is one is just shooting at a general group of people, like saying Democrats for being part of that group of people, just completely removing all their agency. And the other is attacking like a party establishment, the party itself, party platform. And so what I'm trying to get at is a lot of these statements is still him just saying Republicans. So it's not even saying, I'm just saying that there's a lot of this here that I wouldn't even necessarily disagree with.
Sure. I mean, your point is well taken, but let's say someone said something incredibly nasty about your work. I think you would take that kind of personally. Right?
I could take it personally, but I would also see that as distinctly different than if somebody said Dylan. Let's say they said,
sure, but
let's say I work at, I don't know, Build a Bagel, right? Whatever that is. And they said Build a Bagel has terrible ethics. Is very different than Dylan Burns has terrible ethics.
I understand that, but like a lot of people, their political ideology is like the most important thing to them. And if you say something bad about it, it's taken as an attack on them. Like,
but if we keep it like that, then can we not even go after political ideologies and be honest about what they are, right? Because then at that point, I gotta use baby gloves with political ideologies that impact the lives of millions of people. Like, am I supposed to pretend like I think libertarianism has a lot of good points, but I have some nice little niche criticisms? Like, I'll
concede the point. Yeah, if you just say something about like Republicans, if you just say something about the Republican Party, I'll just concede this. That's different than saying something about Republicans. But I guess I would still say like a lot of Republicans will still take that personally, but it is meaningfully different. I agree.
Okay. There's one last thing I want to talk about before I wrap it up, and you can address anything I've said or anything you wanted to get in before we finish. And this has to do with Bill O'Reilly and the Fox News statement. These are about police, about police interactions. So, what Vaush said is, I'm trying to remember exactly what Vaush said before this. Do you remember? Or I can just go play it.
So there's a clip. So there's a clip between Bill O'Reilly and then the clips on Fox News following the murder of George Floyd.
Okay. Should I just play it quick?
Sure.
Okay. 1 second.
If you're willing to concede that you are, maybe Republican voters are a bit more sympathetic than you thought. And last, let's look at a few more hopeful clips. First, this was Bill O'Reilly's reaction to the murder of Eric Garner.
However, I will say that upon seeing the video that you just saw and hearing Mr. Gardner say he could not breathe, I was extremely troubled. I would have loosened my grip. I desperately wish the officer would have done that. Eric Gardner was obese. He had asthma. He was in no condition to absorb what befell him. Yes, he should not have resisted. But all Americans, every one of us, should pity Mr. Gardner and his family. He did not deserve what happened to him. And I think Officer Pantaleo and every other American police officer, every one, would agree with me. He didn't deserve that.
O'Reilly was basically Tucker Carlson 1.0, and in this video, he gets pretty close to calling the killing a lynching. O'Reilly unambiguously sides with Garner's family and against the police.
There is no black man who could die at the hands of the police whose treatment they would not then defend or laud.
What was Fox News' initial reaction to the murder of George Floyd?
Where's the training of these guys? How do you not know the neck is that sensitive?
And Sean, where is the officers that are standing near this guy who are willing to stand up and stop him?
But the protesters are looking at what the local police have done, and they haven't arrested anybody. If you or I were caught on tape choking someone to death, I would assume that we'd be in prison by now. Why do you think the people on the ground feel like there has not been justice, and what is the White House going to do about that?
Yeah, Martha, I can tell you, take the uniform off of that police officer, just have a man with his knee on another man's neck, there'd already be an arrest. And I don't need to wait on the feds. This is a violation of Minnesota state law. This is murder.
And does anyone remember when Bernie Sanders had a town hall with an audience from...
So, I just played the thing. So you had a kind of visceral reaction when I brought this up. It was like, yeah, something about it. Is there anything you want to say about this before I say anything?
Yeah, so there have been some objections to this. So my purpose in putting things this way was to show that Vaush's statement wasn't true. But a lot of people have taken this to mean that something to the effect of like Bill O'Reilly isn't racist or there isn't a problem with Fox News. I don't agree with either of those two statements. And I think that a lot of people are going to take the wrong idea from this section. And that isn't what I intended. I probably edited it wrong. And there's something similar in the stochastic terrorism section. The purpose is to show that like the claims being made aren't substantiated. So like if you take Vaush's claim on its face, like it would be disproven with just like one example. And what I was trying to do was sort of restore a level of scale and sort of a sense of reality. It's like, I don't know exactly what Bill O'Reilly said, but I'm sure he said some pretty nasty stuff, right? And some pretty yeah.
Can I bring something up here for when it comes to? I want to talk about the later Fox News segment, then we can talk about the Bill O'Reilly segment. So
Sure.
Lorna Brox just brought up in chat that he has a clip of Fuentes saying the cop was in the wrong with George Floyd, and I want to use this to talk about a broader point of like that is true that there were like Fox News at first they were pretty like kind of not completely rank and file but pretty rank and file when it came to like this is terrible, this is horrible, oh my god, awful. Then time went on. And the Black Lives Matter movement grew and expanded, and then political winds changed. Then you heard a lot more about fentanyl, a lot more about his criminal past, a lot more about this. And you saw the rhetoric change quickly because at one point it was political suicide to say something bad about Mr. Floyd or to try to character assassinate him as they have many other unarmed black men because of the how much attention it got. But then later it got a little hush hush, and a few riots happened, then they seeped that in. And so I don't think that really is like a good example because if I say like let's say I said about somebody like this person would never ever defend flat earth theory, and then they said flat earth real, and then like a week later it's like yeah, round earth real, of course.
Yeah.
Like
So
I don't think that's a good example.
Yeah, so here's what I'm happy to say. I think Vaush was wrong to say that, and I also think I was wrong to construct the segment this way. I don't think this is. If I were to make the video again, I would not construct the segment this way.
Okay. Okay. I think we've basically covered all the bases. Then, is there anything else you want? Like everything else is like the morality section. I was not able to get through, and I don't want to just like watch all of that. The fascism segment I heard is just a meme, so I don't really give that.
Well, the first part of the fascism segment is kind of a meme, yeah.
And then the stochastic terrorism, which, I haven't watched any of this, so I don't feel like I can challenge you on it. But I think what that means is basically how that'll be homework for everybody at home. You'll have to go there and do it yourself. There you go.
And just to be clear, because some people this wasn't clear, I don't think Vaush is a fascist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's made clear in the section, but there's some confusion because not everyone has seen it. I don't think Vaush is a fascist.
Got it. Okay, so the only one I'm being told that I really should watch is the stochastic terrorism one. So, let's say I watched that off stream and then I had like a problem with it or something I want to talk to you about it. Could I just like message you and we can talk about it?
Sure. I'm gonna either talk about it off or I can come back on or whatever you want.
Oh, either's fine with me.
Cool.
It could be on, it could be off. It doesn't matter to me. I appreciate you coming on. It means a lot to me. Definitely considering, obviously you've been making the circuit. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. You were very thorough. I hope my answers were satisfactory.
Yeah, part of this, I would sit here and go through it with you, but we've already done this for so damn long. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I did my best to be thorough. I hope I acted in some amount of decent faith. And
yeah, certainly.
Thank you. And you want to give yourself a shout out, I guess?
Okay, that's so weird. I have a YouTube channel. It's called DoomerPolitics. I make stupid videos. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah.
You have a good one, okay? All
right, you too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.